Alright, so the proposition that I'll be responding to is that traditional high school grading techniques hinder students' learning abilities. My opponent's secondary claims are that grades tend to reduce preference for challenging tasks and encourage cheating. Second is that grades tend to reduce the quality of students' learning. And third, that grades demote students' relationship with each other. My response to his claim is that grades are actually an objective measurement of students' learning. In response to his secondary claim that grades encourage cheating, my opponent focuses too much on grades being the ultimate factor in cheating. In a study produced by Gullion titled 5 Reasons Why Students Cheat, it found that 3 other reasons were also particular in this study. That 1, students cheat when they lack confidence with their ability, meaning that if they're not confident in being able to achieve something, they will engage in such cheating. Secondly, students who feel they are a part of the school community are less likely to cheat. So what does that mean? Encouraging a community in the school allows for students to take pride and enjoyment in activities that they take part of. As students feel comfortable being a part of the school community, they value the school. According to Challenge Success, honesty and integrity kick in regardless of how they are doing in classes, and that's when community is valued. Thirdly, students who feel their teacher cares are less likely to cheat. This is all about the perception of the student. When students perceive they have a teacher that cares about them and exhibits competence, they are least likely to cheat. In response to the secondary claim that procrastination is independent from cheating, my opponent stated that the grades tend to reduce the quality of students' learning, and as a result, students have to engage in procrastination. As a matter of fact, I have a study titled "My Instructor Made Me Do It: Characteristics of Procrastination," stating that there are also other traits of why students procrastinate. And that's it, one of them being interest in an assignment, basically saying that if a student is not interested in an assignment, they will be more likely to hold off an assignment. Secondly, skill variety. If a student has different skills that they could bring to a project and not just focusing on one, it tends to reduce procrastination. Another problem that encourages procrastination is the fact of the clarity of instructions. If instructions are not clear, then students will have a tendency to procrastinate. And as a matter of fact, interestingly enough, the perceived difficulty of the assignment did not emerge as one of the aspects of the assignment, rather the effective motivation of the clarity. If students were not confused about what was expected or what they needed to do in order to succeed, they wouldn't procrastinate. Another factor is interdependence. If our assignments weren't as large and they were broken down, students would be less likely to procrastinate. And finally, social norms. If the classroom is set to social norms for promptness and timely completion, students won't engage in procrastination. In response to claim 3 that grades demote students' relationship with each other, according to the grading rubric at the University of Minnesota, they assess one of the grading rubrics to be called the Criterion Reference Grades Measure, which basically designates A, B, C, D, E. So it basically measures how well the individual student does relative to predetermined performance levels. So this is usually used for teachers when they want to determine how well each student has learned specific knowledge or skills. It's based on an absolute scale, so like I said, 100 to 90 would be an A, 89 and so forth would be a B. And what was interesting enough about this is that this rubric actually, one of its advantages is that students don't compete with each other. So coming back to my opponent's proposition that traditional high school grading techniques hinder students' learning abilities, I actually have to say that grades are more of an objective measurement of students' learning, and cheating is actually a result of several factors. Procrastination is independent from grading, and grades reduce competition. Thank you.
All right, structurally everything's fine and it's easy to follow. Basically, on each of the points that you develop, you're presenting a counter-causality argument. So you're challenging the reasoning conclusion of the advocate as to what the causes are, and you suggest alternate causalities. And that's pretty much it on each of those points. So your reasoning process is very clear. What's not as clear is what the problems with, what limitations there might be on the advocate's argument. So I like the idea that you've come up with these counter-causalities, and I think you do a good job supporting them. I thought you had excellent evidence on those points explaining why there are all these other issues that might affect the rate of cheating or procrastination, and I thought that those worked really well. What I think you need to do is contrast it a little bit more to the evidence that the advocate used and talk about what kinds of data they had in comparison. And the last one, for instance, you talked about how when we have these objective measures where the students are not competing against each other, but against particular standards that are absolute, this University of Minnesota rubric that they're talking about. Well, okay, I see that that's supposed to work. Do we have any results that makes a comparison that shows, for instance, that students achieve higher? Or did the advocate present any information that suggests that, what percentage of students are graded on a class curve where they are affected by the performance of their classmates rather than on some standard measure? I think that would be an important consideration. I mean, I have a curve in class, for instance, but it's not a curve that's designed to exclude people from particular categories. It's a curve that's designed to represent the skill level of the whole class. And that's a little bit different than what the advocate was talking about. So I think you could do a little bit more contrasting on that. But I thought, like I said, the claims were easy to follow, and I thought you did a pretty good job presenting those.